just the fact that we say thank you is not enough. And what do I mean by that? And here's the key. Here's the key to gratitude of a Jew. Okay. By the way, Yehuda, who's the one we're called Yehudim for, he's the one who admitted in court in the story with Tamar that's coming up in the Parsha in 2 weeks, when he could have gotten away with the fact that he impregnated her and nobody knew about it, and she was willing to die without letting it be known. He was willing to admit the truth, although it caused tremendous embarrassment for him, right? So admit the truth is a very, very, very big deal, especially when it hurts. But that idea of acknowledging God both and admitting the truth is something that, although there were 12 tribes, all 12, and Yehuda was only one tribe, but nevertheless, first of all, the kingship always comes from Yehuda. It's supposed to. We've spoken about what happened when it didn't. But the kingship of the Jewish people is supposed to come from King David through you. He's a direct descendant of Yehuda. That's number one, because the Jewish king had to be one that acknowledged that it wasn't my power and my strength that's doing these great things for the world of the Jewish people, but acknowledge that it comes from Hashem. Bimoda. Acknowledge that it comes from Hashem. And that's a trait that a Jewish king has to have. Therefore, all 12 tribes are called Yehudim, even if they come from Zebulun, or even if they come from Levi. We're all called Yehudim, because it's a trait that we have to all have from Yehuda, even if we're not from his tribe, because again, tied up in the name Yehudi is the concept of gratitude. And
please mute.
It's something that probably I need to work on a whole lifetime, but there can be no greater trait than gratitude and acknowledgement to being a refined and really good observant Jew. It comes, by the way, together with the trait of humility. Because somebody who doesn't have humility, he might say thank you, but he's not really willing to acknowledge, unless somebody does something that's over the top for him, he's not really willing to acknowledge that somebody did him such a big favor. Either I deserve it, or it wasn't such a big favor. And a person will deny, oftentimes, as we do as human beings. We can say thank you, but we don't want to acknowledge how great a favor a person did, and therefore we think that we can or should get away with a simple thank you. Why is that? Why is that sort of we feel that once we've said thank you, Yehuda given, fulfill my obligation, Hasta La Vista Baby, until you do me the next favor, right? I really think that the principles that we're speaking about today are crucial and vital principles to our growth as Jews. The Ten Commandments were not given to the nations of the world. They were given to the Jews. God gave the Torah to the Jews at Mount Sinai. He didn't give it to the world. Number two, there are 7 Noahide laws. Right? And some which are included in the Ten Commandments, although the definition of them may not be the same for a Jew and a non-Jew, some of them are included in Ten Commandments. Why people think that the Ten Commandments are the whole world when there are a number of them in there that they don't observe, let's just take even Shabbos, right? Who the Muslims observe Shabbos on Friday, and the Christians observe Shabbos on Sunday, if they observe it. And how do they observe it? Different issue. But the Torah says it's the 7th day, right? So that Shabbos was not given to them. Shabbos was given to us. As the Medrash says, I have given a gift to the Jewish people. And it's clear in the Torah that it's given to the Jewish people. And God clearly at Sinai is addressing the Jewish people. I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt. Now, even the Muslims who claim that they're the new religion because Muhammad, and really it started from Ishmael, it didn't start from Isaac. I don't think they may claim that they learn out of Egypt. No. They skipped that part. I don't think that's part of Islam. That they missed that. They missed that day in school. So there's a mitzvah in there, and this is an idea that came up with this morning, Baruch Hashem, or last night as I was lying in bed. There's a mitzvah to honor your father and mother. And over the years, we've spoken about that numerous times. It's not one of the 7 Noahide laws. Honor your father and mother. It's not in there. So where does the world get that from? Although our generation, this generation, I shouldn't say we're old guys, but this generation, that's the younger generation today, seems to have lost that mitzvah. That they might pay lip service to it, maybe, but it seems to be a mitzvah that's lost. We all know that the concept of honor your father and mother when we grew up was very, very different than the way people look at it today. And you can see it in the average person's behavior. So why isn't it part of the 10? Why isn't it part of the commandments for non-Jews? So God didn't deem it to be a commandment that they have to do. So why do they have to honor parents? Why do they have to honor parents? Not a rhetorical question.
So they don't eat each other alive.
That the meaning of
You have to teach people to
admit or acknowledge, as you say, when you
I guess they can't hear.
whether it's to God or whether it's to your parent, you're putting yourself in somewhat lower position and acknowledging the higher position. You're the doni rather than the donor. So it's more than just a polite thank you.
Right, but is that a new word, a doni?
Yeah.
What's the advantage? What's the benefit of being the doni rather than the donor? You said you feel a little bit lower, but why? Why? So now if you have children, so now what, you went up a level just because you had a child? Having children is easy. Raising children is a difficult part.
That's right.
I mean, for most people, it's easy, right?
You know, the Gallup poll just came out that for the first time, the group aged 18 to 25 is over 50% say that they don't want to have family dinners with their children. They're too uncomfortable.
Wow. Wow. I would gallop away from that. Go ahead.
I was thinking that not honoring your father and mother, it almost implies that you don't need to learn from them. So the new generation can't learn from the predecessors, so we never make progress in society.
I think both these things are very, very important. We have deference. I mean, you have to show appreciation for them. You have to. It's a menschlich thing to do. That's why we started off today by saying thank you is a menschlich thing to do. It creates a polite society, but you have to have gratitude towards your parents because they did so much for you. And if you don't, and if you don't have deference for those, especially for your parents, you're never going to have gratitude to God, or you're never going to be able to have a relationship with Him. Because if you can't have a relationship with somebody, under most circumstances, because there are situations people don't have parents or people's parents abandoned them. But if you don't have a relationship of gratitude to them, how are you going to have it with God, who you don't see? And you take much more for granted on many of the things. I mean, we take for granted that our diapers were changed and that we grew up and they got all our clothing. We don't usually thank them for that. I have one of my kids who wrote us a long letter, starting from they were infants, writing a whole thank you. It was pretty amazing. But the idea is that for society to function, and this I think is related to what Gary said, for society to function as a normal society, to have deference from the older, to be able to learn from older people who have more experience, which is a problem today. Older people, even when they're 100% capable of doing what they were doing before, oftentimes they'll let go of the jobs in favor of the younger ones, right? It's almost like when a person gets older, loses his value, right? It's a terrible, terrible thing. And in Judaism, we say, ask your father and he'll tell you, ask your grandfather, he'll show you the way, right? They have experience in life, which is why we have to stand up when an older person comes in, a person who has life experience, even a Gentile. That's the halacha. So now I want to flip the question. So I don't want to ask anymore, why don't the non-Jews have that commandment? Why do the Jews need the commandment? If it's part of society, and if it's part of a regular, you need it for societal growth, and I believe you do. and to develop society. So the question I want to ask is, why do we need a special mitzvah in the Torah, honor your father and mother? It's part of the seventh mitzvah that non-Jews have, which is to create a functioning good society, which is why they have that, I think, because it's in that seventh mitzvah, which says you have to have a justice system and a society that functions normally. And without respect for parents, it can't, which is another one of the reasons that our society is going down the tube, only one of many. By the way, if you haven't read, I don't know if you like to read, if you like to watch horror movies, which I don't, but sometimes there's such a thing as frightening articles. There's a frightening article on H.com. I think it's written by Rafael Shore on after the election in New York, how the next step of anti-Semitism has even moved further, how it's becoming normalized. And the scary part of it is logically, read the article. There's no way it's going to turn back. It doesn't seem that it can turn backwards. It seems at this point that it can only develop further. It's a very frightening article, and I'd say it's horrible, right? Okay, let's go back on track. So why do we need a mitzvah of kavod es avicha ve'es imecha? Society has to. So even though you had your hand up, David, you spoke. So let me just ask David. Go ahead, David.
Well, you might ask, why do you need a commandment thou shalt not murder? I had this conversation with an atheist Jewish guy, and I said, if you could murder, you wanted something, I want something Mark has. He's handsome. I'm not.
You'll never have it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I know, no, he has a beautiful wife, and I want to kill him so I can marry his wife. That's a story, you know.
Well, that,
Why wouldn't it?
Never happened.
And I was in a position where I had such a plan that it would be undetectable and I would succeed.
No, you can get away with it.
Yeah. Why wouldn't I do it?
Right.
Okay, because
That's the morality argument of a God, right?
yeah, because Hashem commands you not to kill. Hashem commands
Okay,
you
so you
to honor
okay.
your father.
I have an answer to the question. It's a different answer. Your answer is good. That's fine. But why then? What was asked is the question that I'm asking: why do you need honor your father and mother when it's already part of a societal thing? If the non-Jews are already commanded not to murder, why do we need a special commandment not to murder? Yes. Was that not your question?
Because we see many situations where people do murder because they don't believe in Hashem. They're proud that they got away with it. They're smiling and everything's fine. Or they think they're going to.
You're saying even if it was part of society, which has nothing to do with God per se,
yeah,
is that you're saying as a religious person would have to know that he has to answer to God as well. So we need a separate mitzvah.
Right.
So I don't know that answers the question for honor your father and mother, though.
Like what you were talking about already, that you need it in order to honor Hashem.
Okay, so that may be for us. That may be so. For a Jewish person, you need that because you have to know that it's not an optional thing, or it's not a nice thing to do, which is where we started off with Thanksgiving. Honoring your parents is not just a nice thing or a good thing to do, but it actually is the stepping stone or a stepping stone to having a relationship with Hashem. Good. Okay. Yeah.
It's the basis for society to function. In other words, you got to start somewhere where you have respect for your elders or the law, and that's comes right down to the very basis. If you don't have respect or honor for the parents, the basis of society is gone.
Okay, good. I get that. But I'm asking the question, so therefore society has to have it without being Jewish. So what's the difference between Jews having to have it and society having, and society? We should be required to have it just because it's the menschlich and proper thing to do to have a functioning society.
Yes.
Why do we need it as a commandment? And there could be many answers, and you've touched on some. Yes, Gary.
To pass down the Jewish tradition.
Okay, so that was stated over here without that. Well, that's similar to what you said before, right? If you can't learn from them, okay, very good. Because if you have to know that it's vital.
That was not, my first answer was secular.
No. I'm saying it's the idea is that it's vital because you cannot learn Judaism if you cannot have respect for your parents. And if your parents didn't teach it to you, to at least those who are the teachers who take the place of parents in that case. Good, okay.
What if your parents are evil?
Yes, that's why I just added what I added in. Are you asking? You're asking, do you have to respect them? That you have to learn in Shulchan Aruch. There are laws. If your parents are evil, one, you're required to respect them and honor them. By the way, what Torah says, you should revere them or fear them, and you should respect them. Those are two things, two separate things. And I don't know that non-Jews have the mitzvah of revering their parents. They have a mitzvah of honoring their parents. Okay, let me move on. All right. What I think is that the reason that we have it as a commandment, why it's so special, is because there's a concept of derech eretz kodma Torah. Derech eretz is translated as many ways, but the simple way means the way of the world. Means the simple way that we translate it, and again there are other meanings, is menschlichkeit. To be a mensch comes before Torah. Meaning, if you can't be a mensch, then the Torah that you have doesn't have a vessel, a utensil, through which to hold it. So your Torah is not worth much. Your knowledge is that if you're not a mensch. As a matter of fact, it's called, in the words of the sages, two very strong statements the sages make about it. One is called nezem zav ba'af chazir. It's a golden ring in the nose of a pig, right? You have a golden ring, but look who's wearing the golden ring, right? It's terrible. And not only that, but the Gemara says nevela tova menu, that a carcass of an animal is better than somebody who has Torah knowledge and claims to be somebody in Torah and doesn't behave like a mensch. Now, we discussed it before. I don't want to go into it, but those are very harsh statements, right? So how is a Jew, supposed to come to derech eretz without learning it from the Torah? How can it be derech eretz kodma Torah? How can it be before? Without learning Torah, how are you supposed to come to that? So I think that there's a concept over here that there's derech eretz that's being a mensch that you have to have as your basis. Without that, if you don't even have that basis, then the Torah is not worth much that you have. And that a person has to have because you don't have to become rote, because society says you have to be nice to a person. You have to be polite. You have to be kind. In order for society to function. If you don't have those things, then the Torah that you have is not going to stick. And as a matter of the contrary, it'll be a chilul Hashem. It'll be a desecration of Hashem's name for you not to be a mention and to claim to have Torah. But at the same time, to have the derech eretz that society has is far from enough for a Jew. Because the derech eretz that society is supposed to have is meant so that society can function. The mitzvahs that were given to the Jew were not meant so that society can function, or many of them were not meant so that society can function. They were meant to make the human being the greatest human being that he could be. Two very different things. Society can function if you have people who are honest, if you have people who are kind, if you have people who care for each other, and that's how society is supposed to function. But the Bnei Yisrael weren't just put in the world to have society function, it was to bring godliness to the world. You know, as somebody said, Rabbi Shamshon Raphael Hirsch was once speaking to somebody, and he wrote, I think it was Rabbi Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. I quoted this something earlier this week, maybe at Shal Shudas last week, I don't know, that other religions were meant to teach man about God. Judaism was meant for God to teach human beings about how great man is. Other religions were to teach man how great God is. God gave the Torah to teach man how great man could be. You know how distant those two things are? Those are the difference at the end of the world. Am Yisrael was put here, derech eretz, the way I understand it, and again, maybe I be shown that I'm wrong. I'm sure there's many different definitions. Derech eretz kadma Torah, that derech eretz precedes Torah, meaning the regular menschlichkeit that you have to have out there without developing your midas greatly. That has to be the starting point. If you don't have that, then you have no starting point. Once you have that, now you can learn Torah and understand what the Torah really wants from you. And by the way, that is again, we don't have time to go into the details, but even the do not murder and do not steal that are given to Jews is different than this mitzvah that's given to non-Jews. The definitions are far greater. Now, is it a nice thing for a non-Jew to embarrass another non-Jew publicly? No. When can you stop it? Only if it's libel, at least in our society. If it's libel, it's going to hurt him, right? It's going to hurt his business, it's going to hurt his money, right? You can destroy him. So then you can take him to court and try to get money back.
Try.
In Judaism, that's murder. If you cause somebody else's face to flush from blood or become red from blood because he's so embarrassed that he becomes red, that's akin to murder. You've stolen his soul. Now, it's not necessarily halachically, there are those who are willing to give up their life rather than embarrassing somebody publicly. Those stories are important in the Gemara. But even if you're not required to do so, meaning the ultimate punishment, or I shouldn't say punishment, consequence of doing it may not be as severe as murder. The concept that our sages talk in such a way, and we learned that from Yehuda and Tamar, because Tamar, the courts who came to at that time decide on Tamar what she did wrong, and they thought that she had committed adultery because she was pregnant. So they said, "Hotzio take her out, and she should be burned." And when Yehuda said, "Tzadka mimeni," she's more righteous than I am. I'm the one who's responsible, not I'm right. That's meaning it was me who got her pregnant, but she was willing. She didn't say. She could. She had all the evidence with her. If you learn the Parshat Vayeitzei, she had all the evidence with her that it was Yehuda who did it, right? And without DNA testing, that other ways she had the stuff that had given her as collateral, his ring, his cane, whatever, his stick, right? And she didn't say anything. Rather than embarrass him publicly, she was willing to be killed. So the do not murder goes way deeper than the do not murder in society. And do not steal. So every mitzvah that we have, that's the same as what the non-Jews have. I mean, even the concept of don't commit adultery. Jews also have forbidden to commit adultery or incest, right? But the morality level of a Jew, how a Jew has to behave, is way beyond that which is expected of a non-Jew. So the mitzvahs that are given in the Torah are way beyond. So that would answer your question. Oh, so your answer was a good one, and it was one maybe that you could relate to. So it was better that you gave him your answer than you would have given him my answer. But I'm talking to a different group over here than you were talking to over there. Right? So Derech Eretz comes before Torah. That means you should not teach children to say thank you by rote. You should teach them to have akaras hatov. You should teach them to have gratitude. But it takes a little while. You even say when they're very, very young, you say thank you. All right, thank you, and then you move on. Right? They don't really feel thanks unless it means they're not going to get their next candy. Then they'll say thank you. Right? I have one granddaughter who is so stubborn, not worth the candy. Just two, okay.
So the Shulchan Aruch says, "Kol hamal bin at re'ehu b'shus rabim."
That's Chavero Barabim.
Ain't no
Someone embarrasses somebody else publicly without mechila, right? Without being forgiven, doesn't have a share in olam haba in the world to come. Okay, let's move on. So the concept of Thanksgiving is meant to develop us as people. Why? Because we have a tendency, and this is something I learned in 1990, 91, when Rabbi Ephraim Becker was here. I've repeated many times over the years that the reason that we don't like to say, we don't mind saying thank you, but we don't want to be beholden to people. It's a burden on us. If I were grateful to everybody for what they did for me, more than just saying that, I'd be beholden to everybody, and I don't feel like being beholden. It's too much of a weight on my shoulders. But for the righteous person and for the Jew, being beholden means I'm gonna find favor. I'm gonna try to find something good in other people. I'm beholden to them, and because I'm gonna see them that they did me this favor, I'll I'll like them more if I know they do me this favor. So usually the thank you, people think as the thank you is for the benefit of the one who did the favor or who gave the gift. It's not. In society, it may be enough. As a Jew, it's not enough. It's not for the benefit of the person of the person who received the favor, and that's why he has to say thank you. I'm sorry, for the person who gave the favor, right?
Donor.
The donor. It's not for the benefit of the donor. It's mentioned. Derech Eretz tells me that I have to say thank you to the donor. But Akaras HaTov, and the way the Torah wants it from me, which is why we should have Thanksgiving 354, 365 days a year, depending on what calendar you're following. But every day, it doesn't matter what calendar, every day, is because it is for my growth. If I feel beholden to people who do things for me, and the extent that the sages say you have to feel beholden is mind-boggling. I'm even afraid to say them because I don't want to put myself in a position where I can't fulfill it. It's like we really owe, when people do us a favor, it's not like you pay them once and you're off the hook. Right? But the idea is because if you do that, then certainly you should learn to feel beholden to God. And I'll prove it to you. And this is something that happened, it's maybe 15, 20 years ago. And I've told this story, but I was downtown teaching, and there was a fellow who he belonged to a Reformed temple, but he wasn't a temple goer. He had never studied. And he came to a class because his friend encouraged him to come for a lunch. And I was teaching at that time luncheons downtown for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And I said, and you've heard this from me, probably, a guy comes to my door. And he says to me, my family's hungry and I have no means of income. You know, I don't need $10,000 or $20,000 to pay the bills. I simply need money to put food on the table for a few days. Can you give me $100? Now, let's assume you're assuming this fellow is legit, right? And you feel badly for him. So it's a nice chunk to give him $100, just to pull $100 out of your pocket for somebody you don't know. And you give him $100. And he walks away and doesn't say anything. How are you going to feel?
Taken.
Why? Why will you feel taken? Why?
Basically, because there was no gratitude from the recipient.
So why do you feel taken? You're right. You're right. But what kind of excuse is that? Is what I'm asking you.
You're giving to someone,
right?
And the minimum, the absolute minimum
in derech eretz, in menschlichkeit, right? Not in what we defined as. Go ahead. Is
the minimum should be thank you.
Right. I agree. And if it wasn't done, who did something wrong?
The recipient.
The recipient did something wrong, so he has to fix it. What does that have to do with you? It's your ego. It's not you. It's the ego of the person, the donor. That's all. I did a favor which I was required to do, and the person didn't say thank you. I know it hurts. I know it stinks, and it stings, right? But so what? And I'll say this more. A week later, there's a knock on the door, and it's halftime. So you open the door, right? And the same person comes with the same story. He says, I haven't been able to get money anywhere else. But last week you gave me, I was hoping you'd give me again. Without asking you, probably the response of most people will be, you ingrate. Why should I give you again? You don't even say thanks to me the first time. I'm going to give you again. That is 100% the wrong answer. Because giving the person is, you don't do it for the thank you. You're required, if he's really poor, let's say you have the mitzvah of tzedakah. You had the same mitzvah tonight after he didn't say thank you as he did last week when he asked you the first time. What difference is it? Yes, it's true. He didn't do the minimum that he should have done. But it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm required to give him tzedakah. That's a hard pill for most people to swallow.
Well, the next week he may buy a lottery ticket, win $1 million, come back and give you $15,000.
Yeah, I'd like to know how many people think that when people don't say thank you. You know, he's not saying thank you, but maybe he'll win the lottery and give it back to me. listen, if that goes through your mind and therefore you hold no harsh feelings against him, good for you. Then you belong in the
He said
seats of the
breather.
righteous.
He said,
In that respect, anyway.
Listen, anybody here have an extra pair of wings that they want to give? Most of us don't respond like that. But that's a tough one. Why? Because we think that it's for the benefit of the benefactor. The thank you is for the benefit of the benefactor. And the answer is it's not. It's for the person, the recipient. It's his benefit because he is not just a thank you, the hakar zatov, the acknowledgement that the person gave him because he needs to feel beholden to the other person. And the minimum you'd say feeling beholden is thank you. But that's his problem, not mine. That's what we say, that hakar zatov, giving thanks as a Jew, and that's the definition of a Jew, is far different than the rest of the world. You really think that we're called Yehudim, which means thank you, because we go around saying thank you to people? Does that really make sense to you? It deals with acknowledgement. It deals with admitting. It deals with feeling beholden. Even that we say in the modim anachnu loch, it's the same word, modeh. What's we bow down to you. What is bowing down? It's an acknowledgement. It's feeling deference. All those words are connected with one another. So when we feel badly that somebody didn't say thank you, it's because our ego gets in the way. Right? Now, are we going to help them again and again? But imagine if we really look for ways to be beholden to people because we want to like people and therefore we realize it's in our best interests. So can you start ever saying thank you to Hashem for all the gifts that you have? But you can acknowledge it and you can feel deference to him and you can feel I'm beholden to you. How am I going to look to pay back, to say thank you, to really express thank you? I should say the words, right? You can say that we can daven the Shemona Esrei 3 times a day and never feel thanks, never feel gratitude. So I want to tell you something that happened this week. I had a discussion with a daughter of mine, and she told me she was speaking with a teenage girl. And this teenage girl is in high school, and she was speaking to a daughter of mine, my youngest daughter, and she was saying that, oh, she's having such a hard time in high school, and she's struggling in life with this and this and that, right? And on the overall, she would say that she has more lousy things happening to her in life than good things, right? So why should I be grateful? What is this all about? So the standard answer is, what do you mean? That you have life, you have sight. As we've said many times in the name of Rabbi Weinberg, anything you can get in life is not more valuable than what you already have. Your breath, your eyes, your legs, your heart pumping, anything that you can get is not more valuable than the life itself that you have. So you have the most valuable tools that you need to function here on earth, whatever your responsibility, God-given function is. So why is it that we don't really thank God every morning for the sun rising? Why isn't that we don't thank him really for eyes? We say the bracha for vision, for thanking him for opening up the eyes of the blind in many ways, not just vision, but why don't we thank him regularly for clothing when we have usually a wardrobe, a closet full of clothing, and certainly in this generation, it takes a lot of clothing to fill up a closet.
Yeah.
Well, we say Malbish our minute.
Right, we say it just like we say our sages are trying to sensitize us to that. Yes, you're 100% right, but how many of us are sensitized to it? Right, the idea is you got to work on it. All these things are correct. That's why we're supposed to make brachas on food. Right, it's not like a ritual. Just there's a reason why. Say thank you to God before you eat it. It's not yours before you eat it. So say thank you. And that's the way God says, okay, you acknowledge that you have a benefactor, enjoy it. Right? So she said to me, I told the girl, all these things that you have, you can see, you can breathe, you know, generally you have a life, you have clothing, you have a house. And the girl says, don't tell me that kind of stuff. That's kind of stuff like sort of God owes me, right? No. And he gives it to most people. Well, you're right? He gives it to most people. Therefore, my life on the whole is more lousy than good. What she means is I'm having more struggles with my friends and whatever than I have vacations and cars and whatever else, right? I mean, let's face it, that's what she means. But my daughter said to me, so how do I answer? Because she feels that way. And it's true, people feel that way. They don't have gratitude for the most part, real gratitude for the things that they have that we do take for granted. And the more we have, the more we take things for granted. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
We're a little cuckoo. And I called her back the next day, yesterday, and I said, the answer to your question, as I'm preparing this class, I know the answer to your question, is because she was not taught gratitude from a young age. She never worked on gratitude. She was taught to say thank you, and she was never taught what Parshat Tov is. If you're taught from a young age, and that's why we teach our children, Moda'ani, we try to teach our children to be grateful, not just to say thank you, but to acknowledge the person and really, look, it's a lifetime's work. It's not, but it has to start when you're young. If not, it's not impossible later on, but the work gets much more difficult. Imagine that it was drilled into children from the time that they're young not to take things for granted and to find ways to appreciate the gifts that are always given to them. Because I'm sure the different things you see every day that you can appreciate your vision for. But it's hard when things are going tough, all of a sudden to say, oh, focus on your eyesight. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult. Which is why Hakaras Hatov, appreciation, is the key to Jewish growth. It's beyond derech eretz. It's beyond just being a mensch. It's really internalizing that I'm beholden to Almighty for these wonderful gifts He gave me. I talk a good game, but this is a lifetime of work. I don't claim to be there, but I talk about it, and you hope it's more than mitoch shelo lishma bo lishma. It's more than, well, if you don't do it for the right reason, eventually you'll come to do it for the right reason. With things that you take for granted, it doesn't necessarily work like that. It's because the reason I try to recognize it is because I'm hoping to internalize these ideas. And the more I talk about it and recognize it, I'm not trying to show off to anybody, but every second of every minute of life that we have, we can find something to be grateful for. I'm going to close with the story which I've also told you, as I heard from Reb Michal Twersky. He or his wife had a very aged uncle many years ago. And as he was getting older, he got so sick and he had so many illnesses, right? And whenever they would come, I think his name was Uncle Herschel, I'm not sure what that is. Uncle Herschel, how are you? Oh, things are wonderful. He'd always find a positive thing that he's enjoying in life, right? And this went on and on. And after a while, they start to think, oh, he's faking it. Like, come on, you have so many stars. One day he comes home, he can't breathe anymore. He goes to the hospital, and he's on a breathing machine, and he can't walk, and he went blind, and and so this is how he told over the story. He said, when I came home, he said, now we're going to get him. Like, he's in really bad shape now. What are you going to, come on. What is he going to say? So they came, Uncle Herschel, how are you? After he had just come back from the hospital, right? Now he couldn't even breathe on his own anymore without the oxygen, whatever. He said, things are so wonderful. You know how many people are in my condition, and they're in the hospital or in the nursing home, and they're alone, and I'm surrounded by my family. He says, people are coming to visit me. Look, some people don't have that, but he found a way to always appreciate what he had. But it didn't start when he was an old man and things started to go bad. You can be sure that a person like that was working on it a long time. So whatever stage we are in life, more than saying thank you, at the very least, say thank you. Say what for. So at least, thank you for doing this. Thank you. I benefited from what you did so much. Even somebody that didn't mean it for you. One of the things about Hakaras Hatov is the person didn't have you in mind, but you benefited from it. Say something to them. So if somebody wrote a book, right? Why would you say thank you? You might want to compliment them to make them feel good, but say thank you because you benefited from it. You really, I benefited from it. There's a fellow who's around here. He's been very sick lately, but he got an award a couple of weeks ago on work that he did in the field of ADHD research. And he gave a paper in front of a bunch of professionals. And afterwards, so many people came over to him and said, your book changed my life because I had, And it was so fulfilling to him. So there's also something, I don't know how much they felt beholden, but you compliment somebody, that's also a big thing. But we should try, when we're showing gratitude, to express more than just a thank you. Find more way, and hopefully each time we'll feel a little bit more beholden, and we will have the real Thanksgiving. I mean, we will give thanks all the time, which is why, in elementary school, my teachers used to say to me, "Oh, we have Thanksgiving 365 days a year." I'm not critical of Thanksgiving one day a year. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. But we have to know that the reality is Thanksgiving is every day of our lives.
This parsha, to me, this is from Rav Dessler, actually, is the parsha of sticks and stones, or in chronological order, stones and sticks. Right? It's a parsha that deals with hishtadlos and betochen. You know what I mean? Hishtadlos means the effort that we need to put in, and betochen means the trust that we have in Hashem. And there are different levels that people have of this. And of course, it varies as we go through it, but we'll just take a snapshot of it. That there's a person that says that everything is his effort. And he has no betochen, he has no trust, he has no, we'll call it emunah also, no emunah in Hashem doing anything. And so he does everything himself. We'll call that level 1. He's doing everything himself in his mind. Level 2 is the person that has all betochen, right? So he just stays in bed all day. Hashem will provide. Hashem will provide. Right? That's level 2. Level 2. Level 3 is a person where I think where most of us are, hopefully, is this third level, which is not the highest level, but it's a high level. And that is to try and see, as each episode in your life unfolds, which is every second of every day, about how much effort one should put in versus how much betochen one should have. Because we're in the midst of a really incredible paradox. On Rosh Hashanah, we have in mind that Hashem is going to grant us our parnasa for the whole rest of the year. The whole rest of the year. But yet, the day after Rosh Hashanah is over, we have to go back to the office and work like crazy in order to make parnasa for ourselves. So we've got this paradox, because Hashem's going to provide for me, but on the other hand, I've got to do the effort that it takes in order to do that. So how much effort is that? How much effort does one put in order to do that? So that's what we'll see here in a minute when I articulate the stones and sticks. The fourth level is the level of David HaMelech. Rav Dessler says, the level of David HaMelech is where the hishtadlos and the betochen become unified. This is the level Rav Dessler says, if you think you're on this level, you're not. But basically, it's where it becomes unified. And that is that David HaMelech knew that even the abilities that he had to do things came from Hashem. And therefore, everything was attributable to Hashem. Even the efforts that he was supposed to do came from Hashem.
So if someone doesn't make the effort, it's not his fault. Came from Hashem.
Came from Hashem. That's true. If a person doesn't have the ability to do a triple forward flip in the air from a standing position, right? He doesn't need to do that as a stadlos.
But let's say
Right?
someone has the
If he has the ability to
and
do
doesn't
that,
do it.
but if he has the ability, he doesn't do it. So then he's not doing the stadlos that he needs to do. So it basically is now relying solely on Hashem as opposed to on himself. That's not right either. So he's got to be, if he can do it, he needs to do it. And so he goes out and he does it for the circus, and they hire him and he makes some money, and that's how he makes his stadlos, and Hashem then provides the parnasa for that. But where we are is we're trying to balance where we are in terms of hishtadlos and betochen. How much is it, So Yaakov is demonstrating it to us in this parsha in two ways. It really is through every single parsha, and you have to hunt for it a little bit more. It's more obvious in this parsha, I think. That's why Rav Dessler picks this one up. It's not the only one. The spies, the Meraglim, is another parsha that he brings as an example of where they did too much hishtadlos. going and spying out the land was too much. They should have had more belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he was going to, allow them to conquer the land, and they didn't need to send spies out, but they sent spies out, and that was doing too much, Ishtadlos. What Yaakov is doing is when he lies down, right, he goes and he comes back to the spot. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but he then puts around his head, they say 12 stones. It doesn't say how many stones. When he wakes up in the morning, it's all fused into one. So they say it's 12 stones. And each stone wanted to be under the head of the tzaddik, and to resolve the conflict, Hashem merged the stones together, and that's the stones that Yaakov anoints with oil when he gets up. But those stones represent the 12 tribes. That's why they say they're 12. It doesn't say it in the Parsha that they're 12. And so anyway, he puts them around his head, and it says in the Parsha why? To save him from the wild animals. What wild animal is not going to know to walk in between the stones? I mean, but what Yaakov's showing us is that a person needs to do hishtadlos and not just rely on a miracle. Even though we know that everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we still need to do. That's a paradox that we have.
That's effort.
That's effort. That's effort. That's the effort that he went to. That's hishtadlos. And the bitachon is the trust in Hashem, that Hashem is going to take care of him. He knows that. But he's doing hishtadlos so that it won't, and I think this is the key point, that it won't appear that he's relying on a miracle. To who? Well, in the first instance, only to Yaakov and to us, but only to Yaakov. So to him, he's putting in the hishtadlos that he needs to in order to know that he's not solely relying on a miracle. He knows Hashem's going to take care of him, but he needs to do his part of it also. Every miracle that happens in the Torah, in the Tanakh, I'll say, including the prophets, there has to be a person along with Hashem. Because everything has to come through us. It's a partnership between us and Hashem. Hashem does everything, but without the human effort that goes into it, doesn't happen. So it all has to happen that way. That's why, Moshe and Aaron had to use the staff to do the plagues in Mitzrayim, and Moshe had to use the staff to split the sea. And Nachshon and Ben Aminadab had to run into the sea up to his nostrils before the sea split. There has to be a human interaction to all of those miracles. The same thing is true on a I don't even know if it's a lower level, but I'll call it a lower level, a more mundane level, right? Like putting these rocks around the head, right? Or getting up and going down to the office and billing, 10 hours in an 8-hour day, And I'm just joking.
No, you're not.
So you have to put the right amount of hishtadlos in. So Yaakov is showing that so it doesn't appear that you're relying on a miracle. And that's what Yaakov's showing to himself. I'm not relying on a miracle. I'm putting these stones around to save myself from the wild animals. And near the end of the Parsha, after all of the 11 sons and Dinah are born, which happens in this Parsha, which makes this really such a significant Parsha, because 11 of the 12 sons of Yaakov were born in this Parsha, plus Dinah. And then Benjamin is going to be born soon, but later, but not in this Parsha. But in this Parsha, we have 11 sons born. And at the end of that time, Yaakov goes to Lavan and he says, "It's time for me to go." And Lavan says, I know that my success has come solely as a result of you. This is true of really all non-Jewish nations who have Jewish people living in them, that they finally wake up at some point, I hope, and recognize that it's because of the Jews that they've been successful. Lavan did. Lavan said, I know that it's because of you that I've been successful. So don't go. Name your wage. Name your wage. Tell me what you want. So Yaakov then sets up that he's going to take all of the herds that he's been running for Lavan. He's going to take out of the herds all the colored and speckled and spotted and striped animals and give those to Lavan to hit Lavan's sons 3 days ride away, 3 days travel away, and those will be Lavan, and he'll take the white ones, and whatever the white ones produce that are colored or speckled or so forth, because he's three days ride away, those will be Yaakov's. Now, the likelihood genetically of them producing speckled and spotted and striped is remote, when the only ones that he kept were the white ones. Right? I mean, I don't know if they knew genetics at that point, probably not, but they probably knew that if you had two white animals, that they would produce a white animal as opposed to producing a spotted one. Right? Because the white would be we would say nowadays that that's two recessive genes, right? The white is two recessive genes. So therefore you're going to produce a white one as opposed to a spotted one. So Yaakov said, so I'll keep the white ones, and whatever spotted ones are produced by these, I'll get to keep those. And the other spotted ones you'll take. Are you with me, or do you have a question?
No.
So then what happens is that Lavan keeps changing the deal back and forth. And Yaakov sets up these sticks. He takes these sticks and he peels them around so that they show the white underneath the bark. And he sticks them in front of the water troughs of the animals, the sheep and the goats, and he puts them there. And they go and they drink from the water troughs, and then they go mate, and then they have spotted, striped, and colored animals.
How did Yaakov know to do that?
I don't know.
And what does that have
Parsha
to
doesn't
do
say.
with They're having spotted animals.
So what that has to do is nothing, because Yaakov, when he's telling his wives, he tells them that he had a dream. And in the dream, the angels came to him and said, don't worry about Lavan changing the deal. We know he's changed the deal 100 times. Don't worry about it, because Hashem is going to produce for you whatever animals you need in order for you to succeed, which is what happens. Right? Then what happens? Lavan's sons are there. And they say to Yaakov, you're stealing our father's animals. So what did Yaakov do? He set up the sticks as his hishtadlos. Who is he trying to show that he was not relying on a miracle? Who was really good at black magic? Lavan. And who was also good at black magic? Lavan's sons. Who were the father, someone was the father, they were the father of the uncles of Bilam, they say. I don't know how many generations below Bilam was, but basically they descended from Lavan's sons. And so Bilam descended from Lavan's sons. So they were very, very big in black magic, all this stuff. So that's who Yaakov had to show he was not doing a miracle. Because they understood, and he must have some heebie-jeebie here that knows how to do this. Yaakov knew he was relying on Hashem, but he was setting up these sticks in order to show these people that he wasn't relying on a miracle, that he was doing it himself. And so that's why they said what they said. So that's really this kind of the stones and sticks in terms of the fact that the hishtadlos that we put in has to be to a level where it shows that it's not a miracle. Even though it is a miracle, that's the paradox. That's why you have to go to your office. That's why you have to go show that property to someone.
I don't.
See?
I don't.
You graduated to the point where you can just rely on a Kodesh Baruch Hu.
So do you.
So did I. Right. Anyway, that's the sticks and stones. The other thing I want to say about the beginning of this parsha too is this is a dream. This is a really important dream that Yaakov has when he comes to this place, the Mokum, which is a significant use of the term Mokum in this parsha. And the Mokum refers back to the Akedah, because at the Akedah, when Abraham and Yitzhak are going, they see Hamokum Merachok, they see the place in the distance. And that's the place where the Akedah took place. So this is the same thing. Yaakov leaves Beersheba and he goes to Haran, but then he realizes that he went by this place without stopping. So he immediately turns around. And when he turns around, Rashi explains that when he turns around, then he confronts the place. So it's kafisis haderech, which is the folding up of the land underneath him to get him there virtually immediately. He flew back to that place. And then miraculously, the sun set early so that he would spend the night. And he spends the night and he has a dream. And he dreams about a ladder with the base on the earth and the head of it's in the heavens. And there are angels that are ascending and then descending. Ascending and descending. Right? You see where that is in the Parsha?
Yeah, but of course, the immediate response of it could be descending and ascending. That the malachim come from.
Correct. So there are explanations for that. Do you want to hear one?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So one is that there were angels that escorted Yaakov when he was in Eretz Israel, which is where he's coming from. He's coming from Beersheba. And then those angels only are assigned for Eretz Israel, so they go up the ladder. That's why they're ascending. Then there are angels that are going to escort him when he's in Chutz La'aretz, which is where he's going to be with Lavan. And so those are the angels that are coming down. So that's one explanation of where they are. Another explanation is that there were angels that were sent to save Lot 138 years before this. And it's those two angels who are now ascending because Hashem has finally forgiven them because Ariel had said, I will destroy Saddam, not Hashem. I will destroy Hashem. So angels really don't have a Yetzer Hara per se like we do, but nevertheless, they can still do things inappropriately. And so that happened. So they had to stay as a punishment down here for 138 years. So they're going up. And then there's new angels that are coming down. Okay. So that's two explanations. One of the explanations relates to Shabbos. We say Shalom Aleichem 3 times, the verses, there are 4 verses. Shalom Aleichem, welcome, come in, bless me, leave. So why do we say leave? What's that about? Seitzem l'shalom. That's the 4th verse. We say leave, right. Get out of here. What is that? What is that about? So one of the things that they say is that, every person is accompanied by angels, by 2 angels during the week, and they come home after shul on Shabbos. And if there's a beautiful Shabbos table set, everything's wonderful. So then the bad angel, the good angel says to the bad angel, so should it be next Shabbos? And the bad angel has to say, Amen. But if it's not set like that, it's not nice. So then the bad angel says to the good angel, so should it be next Shabbos? And the good angel has to say, Amen. So it's those 2 angels then that are coming in, and we welcome them. But then at the end, we say goodbye because we don't need them now on Shabbos. Why not? We have a neshama yasera, have an extra neshama, not really an extra, but an expanded neshama on Shabbos. So we don't need the angels to take care of us on Shabbos because we're with Hashem.
Do we thank them?
Yeah, we thank them. Yeah. Come in, and we say, bless me. That's one of the problems. Some people don't say that verse. Some people don't say the Seitzem Yishalom verses. They don't say the Baruch Huni because you're supposed to be getting blessed from Hashem, not from the angels. So you have to kind of have in mind that you're asking the angels, that Hashem to bless you through the angels. And then on the Seitzem Yishalom, some people don't say that because they don't want the angels to leave. They want the angels to leave, stay. So they don't sing the last verse. So anyway, that's all with these angels too. Now this is a very important dream that Yaakov is having. It's basically a dream that makes a huge impression upon him and that he acts on after he wakes up in the morning, and he realized that this was nevuah. Now dreams can be at 5 different levels, at the levels of the neshama essentially. The highest level, which is really nevuah coming from Hashem. And the lowest level is the nefesh, which really comes from the physicality. It could be what you ate or what you saw or what you heard or something like that. So it's not anything that's prophetic. It's just a reaction that you're having to to your day. And you're having a dream in that way. But dreams are important. There are 10 dreams in the Chumash. There are more in Tanakh, but there are 10 dreams in the Chumash. And 9 of them are in this week's Parsha. 9? No, sorry. Not that many. 9 of them, I know what I was going to say. 9 of them are during the month of Kislev. During the month of Kislev. We just started Kislev. We had Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh was on Friday. And so we're in the month of Kislev now. So we have this dream. There's another dream of Yaakov that he has there, which also occurs in Kislev. There's 2 dreams by Yosef that he tells to his brothers. That's 4. There's the dream of the butler and the baker, the wine steward and the baker, right? So that's 6. Paro has 2 dreams. That's 8. And then Lavan in this parsha has a dream not to speak to Yaakov either good or bad. So that's 9. And then there's a dream that Elimelech had. Remember, he dreamed, and Hashem came to him in the dream and said, "Don't do anything to Sarah, because she's the wife of a prophet." Remember that? Avimelech. Right. So those are the dreams that are in Chumash. Those are the 10 dreams that are in Chumash, and all of them except one are during the month of Kislev. These parshas are all during Kislev. Kislev is the sense of sleep, which is also has the sense of dreams, the sense of dreaming. Each month has a sense that's associated to it, and so Kislev is the month of sleep, or the month of dreams. So the 9 of these 10 dreams are during Kislev. Okay, so this is this very important dream that Yaakov is having, and he acts upon it. And one of the things that he does is that he anoints the rock now, which is one rock that started off as multiple rocks, but it's now one rock. He anoints it with oil when he wakes up. He awoke from his sleep and he said, "Surely Hashem is in this place." Hamokim is used many times here, I think 3 times here. So surely Hashem is in this place, and I did not know. And he became frightened, and he said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of Hashem, and this is the gate of the heavens." So he arose early in the morning. He took the stone that he had placed around his head.
What page are you on?
On page.
It's 147. 147.
How awesome, right. Now down to, I think, Pasuk 16. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of Hashem, and this is the gate to the heavens. And Yaakov arose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had placed around his head and set it up as a pillar, and he poured oil on it on the top. A little later in the Parsha, just keep your finger on that place, but a little later in the Parsha, he meets Rachel. And one of the things he does when he meets her is that he weeps. It says, this is in chapter 29, Pasuk 11, which is on page 149. Then Yaakov kissed Rachel, and he raised his voice and wept. Rashi says, he wept because he foresaw through divine inspiration, through Ruach HaKodesh, that she would not enter with him to burial. Rachel is not buried with the others in Moras HaMachpelah. She's married on the road to Efrat, which we call Beis Lechem. And so she wouldn't be buried there. But Rashi says, Dover Acher, there's an alternative explanation, and that is he cried because he came with empty hands. He said, Eliezer, my paternal grandfather's slave, who came to find a wife for my father, had in his hands nose rings and bracelets and delicacies, so he could Makadesh Rivka. I have nothing, he says. He says, but I have nothing in my hand. Why not? Because Yaakov was empty-handed, Rashi explains to us, based upon a midrash, that when Yaakov was going away from Beersheba, he was going for two reasons. One is he was 63 years old, so he was going to get married. He ends up spending 14 years in the yeshiva at Shem V'Ever, and then he goes to Lavan, and so he's 77 when he meets Ruchel. He gets married 7 years later. He's 84. Okay, when he marries Leah and then Ruchel, he marries them in the same, just 1 week apart. Although he works an extra 7 years after that for Ruchel. But Yaakov was empty-handed because Eliphaz, the son of Esav, pursued him at the command of his father. Esav said, go after and kill Yaakov. So, to kill him. So Eliphaz overtook Yaakov and he was going to kill him. But Eliphaz grew up in the house of his grandfather, Abraham. In the house of his grandfather, Yitzhak. And so he grew up in the embrace of Yitzhak. And so he grew up under that influence. So he withdrew his hand from murdering his uncle. And Eliphaz said to Yaakov, but what should I tell my father? Because I also have a commandment of Kibud Avaim, and I want to honor my father. And my father told me to kill you. So what should I do? So Yaakov says to him, take that which is in my hand. Take everything that I have. Because a poor man is one of the 4 people that is considered to be dead when he's alive. And so therefore you can say that I'm a dead person. And so that's what Eliphaz does. So Eliphaz takes everything except for 2 things. Yaakov's staff, and he also had this little small pach katanim, this little jug of oil. The oil that he got either from his father Yitzhak at the time of the bruchas, or he got in the yeshiva Shem V'Ever, but it's that oil that came back with the dove at in Parshas Noach, right? That Noach then took the olive branch that was there and squeezed the oil, and he gave it to Shem, and Shem then had it in the yeshiva. He either gave it to Abraham, and Abraham gave it to Yitzhak, and Yitzhak gave it to Yaakov, or it was just in the yeshiva of Shem V'Ever, and Yaakov got it from there, and he had this little small oil, this jug of oil, which that jug of oil is going to show up again in about 3 weeks in your windows. That's the jug of oil. So he has nothing except the staff and this oil, and that's where the oil is coming out here to be put on this rock. This is the kind of oil that you continues to pour. We've had Haftorah about it. Avadia's, it doesn't say it by name, but Avadia's widow had 2 sons, and she was deep in debt, and so the creditors were going to come and take her sons. So she came to Elisha, and Elisha says, what do you have? She says, well, I have this little oil. And he says, okay, good. So get all the vessels that you possibly can. And then they took the oil and poured it into the vessels. It was enough to pay off the debts and to also provide for a nice living for she and her sons after that.
And they didn't even have to drill.
Didn't even have to drill. Didn't have to drill.
It was olive oil or what?
Yeah, it was olive oil from the olives that were on the tree branch that the dove brought back to Noach. The Noach then took the olives off, squeezed it ever so slightly, and got the best of the oil out of those olives. Okay. And that takes us to the end of the first Aliyah. There's a lot more to be said, but I'm not going to say it. So now going to the second Aliyah, Yaakov now goes to the east, and he discovers flocks of sheep that are lying down around this well, and this well has a big rock on it. Another rock has a big rock on it. The reason for the rock on the well is because the shepherds in the area didn't trust each other. They were living in Lavan's vicinity, right? Nobody trusts anybody. And so they put this rock on, so it takes, when all the shepherds bring their flocks in, so then there's enough shepherds to be able to move the rock. But any 1, 2, or 3 or 4 shepherds can't even move the rock together. They have to wait for all the flocks to come in, and that keeps everybody honest because nobody's going to take more than their share of the water then by themselves. So he asks, do you know Lavan? And first he asks him, how come you're not out grazing your flocks now? How come you have them sleeping here? So he says, because we're not able to water the flocks and go out because of this rock. And so while he's speaking with them, then Rachel comes, and it was when Yaakov saw Rachel, she's the daughter of Lavan, his mother's brother, and the flock of Lavan, and all the way. I think I pointed this out to you before. All of the matriarchs come from Haran. Haran was Abraham's brother who was burned in the furnace, and they really all come from him, right? Because Sarai and Milcah were sisters, daughters of Haran. Abraham married one. Nachar married Milcah, and then they had 8 sons, the 8th one of which was Bethuel, and Bethuel then had Rivkah and Lavan, and then Lavan had Rachel and Leah. And also they say also Bila and Zilpah, although by different mothers. But so they all descended from the 4 wives of Yaakov plus Rivkah plus Sarah, all descended from Haran.
Did you just say that Esau's daughter was Leah?
No. No, I hoped I said that Lavan's daughter was Leah and Rachel. And also Bila and Zilpah were also Lavan's daughters, right? Because from different mother, though, from a different mother mothers than Leah and Rachel. Leah and Rachel were from the same mother as well as the same father. Some say they were twins, which was one reason why Yaakov might not have recognized her. So Lavan is his mother's brother, and I'm just pointing out to you that they all descend from Haran. All the matriarchs descend from Haran. So Yaakov comes forward. He rolls the stone. You're right. He's so in love with Rachel, and his adrenaline is going, and he's able to lift the stone by himself. So then Yaakov kissed Rachel and wept, and he wept as we said because he didn't have anything to give her, couldn't be Mekadesh her. So Yaakov then tells Rachel that he's her father's brother, which is of course a little bit inaccurate. But what he's telling him is that she says to him, my father's going to try to trick you, and he says, yeah, if he tries to trick me, I'm going to trick him right back. We know who won on that. And it was when Lavan heard. You have to understand too, and I should have said this at the beginning. Rav Dezer says, as I've said many times, that people are given major characteristics, and to perfect that characteristic, one is tested in the opposite. So Abraham was Chesed, so he was tested in Gevurah. His 10 tests were in Gevurah. Yitzhak was Gevurah, he was tested in Chesed. So he has the feast with Pichel and Abimelech in last week's Parsha, and then he goes and is able to bless, in this case, Yaakov, right? Yaakov and Esau.
Did they serve him kosher food?
Yeah, they had kosher food there. He made them a whole feast. He made them the feast. That's what a person does when he wants to make up with people, and it's difficult to do chesed to your enemy. That's a hard thing to do.
Was there a Mashiach involved?
Yitzhak was Shomer Shabbos. He didn't need a Mashgiach since he was Shomer Shabbos himself. If the owner Shomer Shabbos, he doesn't need a Mashgiach. Yeah.
That's not true here. Because
Sure.
if someone opens a kosher delicatessen and he's Orthodox, he still needs a Mashiach.
I don't think he needs a Mashgiach.
Really?
Oh, no, I don't think so. Can ask him. I don't think he needs one. So and he embraced him and he kissed him and he brought him to his house, and of course he kissed him. Rashi explains he's looking for where's the where's the stuff. When Eliezer was here, last generation, he had all this stuff. He had 10 camels full of stuff. Where's your stuff? And of course, Yaakov doesn't have anything. So then Yaakov stays there. And Lavan finally says to Yaakov, you've been here a little long and you're not working for your pay. It's time for you to get a job, buddy. So so Lavan says to Yaakov, is it that you're my brother, that you should work for me without charge? This is the way Lavan speaks, in riddles. Should you really be working for me for free here? Shouldn't you be getting a wage? So tell me, what are your wages? So Lavan had these 2 daughters, where the Torah tells us. Leah's eyes were weak because she was weeping, the Midrash says, for Esau, because it came out by prophecy that, she was going to marry the oldest brother, and Rachel was going to marry the second brother because Leah was older than Rachel. Okay, and so she was crying because she didn't want to marry Esau because he already had a horrible reputation even by that time. And so she didn't want to marry, so she was crying. And Yaakov loved Rachel, and so he said, you know what, I'll tell you what I'll do. Give me Rachel, your youngest daughter, and as a wife, and I will work 7 years for her. And he works for her, and he's so in love with her, and he's so excited about it that it seems to him like it goes by in a flash. So the time comes. Now 7 years have gone by. Now he's 84, and they make a feast. And Lavan gathered all the people together. Guess what? Mazel tov. Leah is engaged. And then he puts Leah there instead of Rachel. And Rachel, of course, realizes that her sister is going to be totally humiliated if Yaakov doesn't, because she and Yaakov had made up these signs because they figured something like this would happen. And so they made up these signs. She gives those signs to her sister Leah. And Leah has the signs. And that's why, another reason why Yaakov didn't realize who he was with until the morning. And he gets up in the morning, and guess what? And it was in the morning, and behold, it was Leah.
Surprise.
You thought you chose door number 1? You got door number 2. So he got Leah. And, there's a really deep Torah about these gifts of the signs that Rachel gives to Leah. Because I don't know whether Leah knew anything about it. I'm not sure. If she did know anything about it, why did she take the signs from Rachel? So maybe she didn't know anything about it, and maybe she just thought that she was the one that Yaakov wanted to marry. And when Rachel gave her the signs, she gave her the signs and told her, this is what collars do. This is what collars are supposed to do. And so she didn't know there was these special signs. Maybe that's the case.
They didn't talk to each other.
Maybe that's the case. Or maybe she knew. And she knew it was supposed to be Rachel. And Rachel comes in and says, you know what? I'm going to give you these signs, and I want you to marry Yaakov. Now, Yaakov, I interrupted myself from this before, but I'm going to go back to it. So Yaakov's main attribute is emes. So all of his tests are in sheker. So he's sheker from the beginning. When he comes out of the womb, he's sheker. With the bruchas, he's sheker. He's in the middle of sheker. He's got to keep emes, no matter the fact that he's surrounded by a world of falsity. And even his wives, Leah and Rachel, are now sheker with him. And then his father-in-law is sheker with him and changing the deal back and forth all the time. And then later on, his sons are going to be sheker to him and not tell him about what they did with Yosef. And then Yosef's not going to reach out to him for 22 years. And he's going through a life of really being tested constantly by sheker, and he has to maintain emes throughout that whole thing, and he does. And last week, remember, I made the case to you that he was emes in that whole getting in the bruchos. I don't know whether you accept it or not, but that's what the case that I was making. So here we see the same thing, that the wives are doing the same thing. But there's a deep Torah here. How come Leah accepted? If she knew, how could she accept from Rachel Rachel's giving up her whole life. Rachel was destined at that point, if she married Yaakov, to have all 12 tribes. She ends up only with 2/3 because she has Yosef plus she has Benjamin, but Yosef really is Ephraim and Manasseh. So Yosef is really 2 tribes plus 1, right? So really 3, but still she could have had 12. So she's giving up her entire life. Plus she ends up dying early. She dies, next week's Parshat, coming back to Eretz Yisrael. She dies in childbirth with Benjamin. So she's really has given up her whole life for this. So how could Leah accept that? So sometimes people will be blessed enough to get a gift from someone where that person has really thought about how can I give the essence of myself to my very good friend? How can I really give that person exactly what they need? How can I define myself by this gift that I'm giving them? So what should the recipient of that gift do when that gift is offered? If they refuse the gift, then they're refusing to recognize the love and the gift as coming from this person who spent such a great deal of effort and energy to decide on this particular gift. And so to reject a gift like that is rejecting the person. And the gift that Rachel is giving Leah is defining Rachel. That's defining Rachel. Because the Midrash says that we bring this up at Tisha B'Av, that Yirmiyahu went al pi nevuah to all of the matriarchs and the patriarchs to get them to ask Hashem to not destroy the temple and to not exile the Jewish people. And he went to Abraham, and Abraham said, I was willing to give up my own son, so please save the Jewish people. And Hashem said, no, not enough. Yitzchak said, I was willing to give up myself, my own life. No, not enough, right? Yaakov, I was willing to live in exile for 20 years with Laban for the Jewish people. Hashem said, no, not enough, right? Even Sarah, even Rivka, even Leah. And then he comes to Rachel, and Rachel says, I was willing to give up everything so my sister wouldn't be embarrassed. And Hashem says, you're right. I will save the Jewish people, and they'll come back through you. Because the Jewish people will end up coming back into Yerushalayim through Efrat, right, where Kever Rachel is. And so she'll be able to see the Jewish people coming back. So that's what the Midrash says. So basically, it's because of the merit of this really profound gift that the Jewish people are going to be saved and that we're going to be returned back.
Leah could have said, it's wonderful for you to offer this to me, but I can't let you do that to yourself. If she cared as much about Rachel as Rachel cared about
that is totally, totally true. But that would have been a rejection of the gift, and that would have left Rachel undefined as Rachel.
Reb Tzvi? Oh, sorry. Reb Tzvi?
Yes, ma'am.
So, but like later when actually Rachel asks Leah for Dudaim, and Leah
asked, Rachel asked, right? Rachel asked Leah for the Dudaim, right?
Right. And Leah says, so wasn't it enough that you stole my husband and now you want, so apparently she didn't know.
Maybe. She basically, what Miriam is saying is that maybe Leah indicates by that you stole my husband from them, that maybe she didn't know, maybe she didn't realize that. And that's what I started off with by saying, Miriam, that is a view that Leah didn't know, that the only people that knew that it was supposed to be Rachel were Lavan, Yaakov, and Rachel.
Right, absolutely. No, I just wanted to make a comment. Right.
So when Lavan said Mazel Tov, Leah's engaged, right? Nobody knew that it wasn't Leah, even Leah. Leah thought it was her too. So maybe that's true. I was saying that. I started off with acknowledging that there is that view.
Absolutely.
That Leah did not know.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to make this other point about how when someone really offers a profound gift, the one should be careful not to reject that gift, because that gift might be just the defining aspect of that person's personality. And that gift, by receiving it, is really a gift to the giver. That was the point that I was trying to make from that, from the second view, which is that Leah did know.
Very true. Very true. Thank you.
But you're right. You could bring the point with the Judaim up, that Leah says, well, you stole my husband. But it could be the same way, because what happened is that 7 days after Leah married Yaakov, even if Rachel set it up for her to do that, then Rachel married Yaakov. And it says that Yaakov loved Rachel. And this is a very harsh word. It says that he was Sony, that he hated Leah, that she was hated. And that's how she names her first 3 sons. Well, if I have my first son, Reuven, maybe Hashem will see how mistreated I am by my husband. Maybe if I have Shimon, maybe Hashem will hear. That's for Shimon. Or Levi, now that I have 3, because as Rabbi Meyer said earlier, there was a nevuah that Yaakov was going to have 12 sons. So if I have 3 sons, so now I've had my share, so maybe my husband will escort me. So that's where Levi comes in. But she's still hated at that point. And then finally, she has Yehuda, the 4th son. And that's what Rabbi Meyer said earlier. And this is where we get our name from Yehuda. But Yehuda comes from Hadah, for admission, Modeh, thank you, acknowledgement. And Leah said that I'm naming him Yehuda in order to express my gratitude for having more than my share. Have you ever heard of Dave Ramsey? Do you ever hear of him? Right. So I think he's great. He's not Jewish, but basically when people ask him on the phone, when they call in with their money troubles, they say, how are you? And he says, better than I deserve. That's his response. Very sweet. Yes, sir. I'm in the middle. But
so Leah was hated. She wasn't disliked. She was hated.
Hated.
Maybe the reason she was hated is because he wanted to marry Rachel, and she knew, and she messed the whole thing up, and she was
right. That's what Yaakov thinks. That's what Yaakov thinks. Right. Yaakov didn't know that Rachel gave her the signs, right? So Yaakov didn't know that. I mean, everything is right. Some people know some things, and some people know other things, but nobody knows everything. It's a black comedy. So in the morning it was Leah, right? And he accuses Laban of deceiving him and so forth. And Laban says, "Oh, this is how we do things here. You should have known that. We always have to marry the older before the younger. Now, what are you, some kind of a jerk? You don't know that." So, I mean, when people are trying to do the wrong thing, they convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. That's what happened in Sodom, and that's what happened in the times of Noah. That people were doing the wrong thing, but convincing themselves it was right. Same thing here with Laban. So Hashem says, this is interesting in Art Scroll on page 153. It says Hashem saw that Leah was unloved. Right? V'yira Hashem ki sanua. In the Hebrew it says sanua, but for whatever reason, Art Scroll
says
unloved.
They mistranslate a lot of that.
I don't know if they do, but that one I really think is a mistranslation. What do you think, Ira? You think that's a mistranslation? I mean, unloved it's not. They're being nice. It's not. It's not wrong. It's not wrong because she was unloved too. That's true. Because being hated is also being unloved, right? But being hated is stronger, right? That's what you're.
But it says hated.
It does. That's what it says.
Yeah,
I agree. It says Sanua. She was Sanua. I think in Parshat Vayeitzei, where we have a loved wife and a hated wife, I think it does say hated there. I mean, translate. I think they translate it there. It's the same. Pardon? Well, this is where we have the Yofas Tahar. Remember, and then it says right after that a person has 2 wives, one who's loved, and I think they translate it one who's hated.
See, they can't admit that it's possible that one of the avos hates.
Nua, same thing, Nua.
And how do they translate it?
They hated.
Hated,
Yeah.
right? But over here, Sanua, they translate it as
The
unloved.
avos and the avos don't hate, that's the thing that.
Consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
Yeah.
Expand your mind out for that. Okay, so all right, so Leah has Yehuda, right? And she has Reuben, she has Shimon, she has a Levi, and then she has Yehuda. Then she stops giving birth. Rachel says, take a page out of my grandmother-in-law, Sarah, and she gave, when she was unable to bear children, she gave Hagar to Abraham. So I'll give my maidservant Bila to Yaakov, and she does. And Bila conceives and has children. So Bila has one son, and Rachel names her Dan for justice. Right? This was Rachel said, "God has judged me, and He has also heard my voice and has given me a son." So he names her Dan, and then she conceives again and has another son, and that's she calls him Naphtali, because Naphtali means that twisting things, that I've manipulated is a good word for Naphtali. So that's Naphtali. And then Leah saw she had stopped giving birth, so she then gave Zilpah to Yaakov, and she has a son through Zilpah, two sons through Zilpah. One is a good sign. That's God, God. That's God. And then second son, it doesn't say she conceived again, so maybe this was a twin. I'm not sure. Sometimes it says conceived and bore. Sometimes it just says bore. So when it says bore, I think maybe it was twins, but I'm not sure that that's right. It could be. But anyway, it says here that she bore a second son to Yaakov in my good fortune, and so that is Asher. And then Reuben went out with the Dudaim. He finds these Dudaim, right? They're totally hefker, and he brings them back. They're kind of meaningless things. And Leah says, he gives them to Leah, and Rachel says, "Give me your son's Dudaim." And Leah says, "You stole my husband, and now you want me to give you my son's Dudaim also?" So a little bit out of character. It's hard for me to read that. It's hard, but anyway, Rachel gives her the Dudaim, and Leah gives Rachel the Dudaim, and then Rachel says, and Leah says, and Rachel says, "So you can be with your husband," because Leah says, "I'll give you the Dudaim, but I want to be with Yaakov tonight." So then Rachel agrees, and then she goes out and meets Yaakov on his way back, and she conceives maybe one of the straightest of the sons, and that's Yisachar. He's total Torah, and that's the fifth son that Leah bears. And then after that, it says Leah conceived again and bore a son, Zevulun, and that's the Zevulun-Yisachar partnership, which is the way that it was supposed to work with Yaakov and Esav, that Esav was supposed to support Yaakov, and Yaakov was supposed to make the connections, the spiritual connections. And so that's the way Zvulun and Yisachar work. And that's the way they still work. And then afterwards, Leah bore a daughter, Dinah. Now, at the same time that Leah bore a daughter, Dinah, the very next line says that Hashem remembered Rachel. Vayizkar it uses instead of Pokad is what it uses with Sarah, but here it uses Vayizkar. He remembered Rachel and hearkened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived again and bore a son. The Midrash says that the reason that these are juxtaposed, Dinah and Yosef, is because actually Leah was supposed to have the boy, and Rachel was supposed to have the girl. And Leah said to herself, "I can't allow that to happen. I've got to daven for that not to happen, because then I'll have 7. The maidservants each have 2, and Rachel will only have 1. And that would be an embarrassment to Rachel." So she gives back by then davening, and the Midrash says, so the neshamas switched kind of in mid-gestation, right? And the girl's neshama goes over to Leah, and that's Dinah, and the boy's neshama goes over to Rachel, and that's Yosef.
In the process, I hope that didn't make one a bisexual.
Well, I don't think so, but they do say that Yosef was a little effeminate, you know?
Yosef.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what they
really
say.
his
Very, yeah, curling his hair and everything. And then Dina was a little forward.
But,
Anyway, you can make what you want to of that. But now we have all the sons being born, and this is when Yaakov goes to Lavan and says, I'm going to go, and Lavan says, no, make me a deal, and they make this deal, and they go through the sticks now, the sticks part of the process. We already went through that, so we don't need to go through that again. But then after a while, 6 years, Yaakov notices that Lavan doesn't look to him like he used to. Now it says, Yaakov also noted Lavan's disposition that, behold, it was not towards him as it was in earlier days. So Rabbi Meyer has said, makes a point many, many times, that he says it's not that Lavan was looking differently at Yaakov, it's that Yaakov was perceiving Lavan differently than he had before. And that is, maybe he's not so bad. And when he saw that he was thinking that maybe Lavan's not so bad, time to go. Time to go. So Hashem said to Yaakov, time to go. Return to your land of your fathers and to your birthplace, and I'll be with you. And so Yaakov summoned Rachel and Leah, which is always a wise thing to do with one's wife, is when you're making a big decision like this, make sure that you consult with your wife and get her thoughts and get the buy-in. Very important. And Yaakov's teaching us that lesson. That's what he does with Rachel and Leah. And Rachel and Leah say, we don't care if we're here or not. Our father's basically just owned us. He's taken all our property away from us. We got nothing here. Let's go. And so they decide to go, and they go in the manner of the Jewish people leaving Egypt very rapidly. And they're 3 days away, as the Jewish people were from Paro, 3 days away. And then somebody tells Lavan, oh, you know what? Yaakov and all the family has left, just like somebody came to Paro and said, oh, you know, the Jewish people, they're not coming back. They're leaving. Paro chases after the Jewish people. Lavan chases after the family here. There's an Ari that says, in the Ari it says that there were 603,550 animals that went out with Yaakov to mirror the 603,550 men over the age of 20 that left Egypt with Moshe, and so the Lavan overtakes them, just like Paro overtakes us at the sea. Lavan overtakes Yaakov, but Hashem comes to Lavan in a dream and says, "Don't speak to either bad or good." And Lavan comes up to him and he tells him that, but he says, you know, I can understand why maybe you left, but why did you steal my terapim? Why did you steal my little idols? Because Rachel had stolen them. Nobody else knew about them at all except for us and Rachel. And so she hid them from him. And then Yaakov has a tirade against Lavan, saying, you know, for 20 years I worked for you, and I worked in the winter, and I worked in the heat of the summer, and I took all the losses. You never lost any money from what I took care of the sheep, you know, and he goes through this whole thing. And then they make a treaty, mitzvah, which it used to be, they don't have it anymore at the railroad station, but they used to have a sign that said mitzvah. Mitzvah means that that Hashem will watch after you and watch after me, even though we're no longer in each other's sight, which was a nice thing to have at a railroad station where people were leaving town, right? So Hashem will watch over me and watch over you. I think they meant it a little bit differently, that Lavan really meant, you know, if you abuse my daughters, I'm going to get you.
This is at Union Station.
Union Station isn't that?
It was the mitzvah gate.
Oh, I see.
They had a gate, a metal gate, and it had the word mitzvah.
Really?
Yeah, on it.
I wonder who
I don't know what they did when they redid the railroad station. They took it down. I don't know. I don't think they ever put it back up.
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, mitzvah may Hashem keep watch between me and you, for we will be out of each other's sight. Okay. All right. And then Lavan arises in the morning. He kisses his sons and his daughters, and he blesses them. And Lavan went and returned to his place. And Yaakov went out on his way, and he camped, and he encountered two camps, Machanayim, the two camps of angels. We'll pick it up there next week.